Welcome to Inside Out Mental Health at Work and in Life, where we explore why our workplaces feel the way they do and what it takes to build cultures that support genuine well-being. This week there has been a surge of headlines criticising Gen Z for refusing to work overtime or go above and beyond without being paid. It is being framed as a work ethic issue. Some commentators are calling younger workers fragile, entitled, or uninterested in progression. But this narrative completely misses what is actually happening. The real issue here is not generational weakness. It is a refusal to keep upholding an outdated psychological contract that relies on overwork, blurred boundaries, and unpaid labour. Gen Z are not rejecting work. They are rejecting the idea that exploitation is normal. The truth is that many older workers did not want to work this way either. They just did not feel they had a choice. They entered workplaces where saying no came with consequences, where progression was directly tied to self-sacrifice, and where challenging norms was risky. That history matters. But so does the fact that younger workers are now choosing differently. Let's stop pretending unpaid overtime is harmless. Overtime usually signals under-resourcing, poor job design, or unrealistic expectations. When people feel compelled to work beyond their paid hours, it is rarely passion. It is pressure. And pressure in the workplace often hides deeper issues, from chronic workload problems to fear-driven cultures. Gen Z are simply naming this reality out loud. And as uncomfortable as that is for some organisations, it is necessary. Younger workers grew up in a world where the cost of living is unstable, financial security feels out of reach, and burnout is widespread. Of course, they set firmer boundaries. Their circumstances demand it. And that is where the backlash becomes revealing. Why are so many leaders threatened by these boundaries? Why does saying no trigger anxiety in workplaces that claim to care about well-being? Because boundaries expose the truth. They show where systems rely on overwork to survive. They reveal where unrealistic workloads have become normalised. They challenge the convenience of having employees absorb organisational failures silently. Gen Z are not the problem, they are the mirror. It is easier to label a generation as entitled than to confront what this says about work itself. Many organisations rely on the idea that people will give extra time for free, that they will cover gaps, stretch their capacity, and pick up what the system refuses to fix. The discomfort we are seeing is collective resistance to that pattern. And it is long overdue. Let's broaden this out. This is not just about Gen Z. I see older workers, mid-career professionals, carers, neurodivergent staff, and disabled colleagues making similar choices. People are exhausted by cultures that celebrate busyness and reward burnout. They are questioning why paid work is designed in ways that undermine basic well-being. And they are tired of being told to cope better instead of being supported to work sustainably. So perhaps the shift led by Gen Z is actually a cultural rebalancing, a reassertion of humanity in systems that have stretched people too thin for too long. And here is the irony. The same organisations criticising Gen Z are often the ones running well-being campaigns, delivering stress management webinars, and talking about psychological safety. But when push comes to shove, when a younger worker says they are not willing to work unpaid hours, that claim to care is tested, and some organisations fail that test badly. If well-being only applies when it costs nothing, it is not well-being, it is branding. So what does good actually look like? What would a healthy response to this cultural shift be? It looks like organisations reviewing job design with honesty. If a role cannot be done in contracted hours, The job is broken, not the worker. It looks like managers being supported to lead with clarity, empathy and confidence, rather than resorting to pressure, guilt or assumptions about generational attitudes. It looks like leaders recognizing that overtime should be exceptional, not expected, and certainly not unpaid. It looks like creating spaces where people can be honest about their capacity without fear of punishment. And it looks like organizations respecting that boundaries are not barriers to performance. They are guardrails that protect people from burnout and protect organizations from attrition. Let's also ask a harder question. What do we lose when we shame a generation for wanting healthier boundaries? We lose adaptability. We lose creativity. We lose the opportunity to build a culture that future-proofs workplaces instead of repeating old patterns that never worked in the first place. Younger workers are not lowering standards, they are raising them. They are asking for transparency, fairness, psychological safety, and humane expectations. If that feels uncomfortable, maybe the discomfort is the point. So as you listen today, consider this. Where are you still rewarding overwork, even unintentionally? Where does your organization expect people to absorb friction that should be fixed? And what would it look like if we designed work that did not rely on sacrifice to function? Because this shift is not a threat, it is a warning. It is telling us that the old model is cracking and that a better one is possible. We just need the courage to build it. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inside Out: Mental Health at Work and in Life. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit from these insights. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's keep this conversation going. Drop us a message or connect with us on social media. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.